Seriously. Hey, by the way, I see Duck's question. What about Ayuk's BS take? We're going to get to that because, this is more of the whining and crying. Frankly, the 49ers players and fans, I didn't think anybody was more embarrassing than the Cowboys. They're giving the Cowboys a real run for their money.
Oh,
they are. And our man that we're about to bring up right now got a response. Actually,
right now?
Look at this. This is timing, man. This is how you do this thing.
Look at this.
Look at him. Look at him, Jimmy Kempski coming in. He's all tanned and he's been out on the mountains.
Tanned?
Yeah.
That's what you're taking away from us.
I ain't gonna tell that lie.
And cactuses, cacti, whatever you say.
You got a ways to go to work on that tan, brother. I'm just saying.
You go in phases, Derek. Take it from the whitest man on the face of the earth. Okay. All right, Jim. So let's start with that. Ayuk's the latest to pop off. Another weasel. crying in his spilled Cheerios. But you got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to kind of respond a little bit to this thing too. So if for people who don't know, Ayuk essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to surmise it, said the Eagles were fortunate that that Purdy got knocked out because their offense was about to take the Eagles defense apart. Meanwhile, leaving out the part that the Eagles were the ones who knocked him out, and his coach thought a tight end could handle Hassan Reddick, which is a joke. But anyway, you got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to respond to him.
Well, his response was to Julian Love, who said that Nick Sirianni was quote unquote
anybody could run that.
He was along for the ride. Meaning the team. And then he said it was on Good Morning Football on NFL America on NFL Network, and he said you could, like, to the other TV people, you guys could coach this team. So CJ said Julian Love can pull his face mask out of the dirt or something to that effect.
I love it.
And he said he's a captain, Julian Love. So he said he's got the captain badge. He's like, there's no leadership on that team if you're the captain or something to that effect. So CJ is an A+ trash talker, apparently on and off the field.
Love it. But let me ask you real quick. Not to do this whole, I know sometimes we're overly sensitive when it comes to a fan base and whatnot. The whole no one likes us, we don't care. We definitely care. Okay, let's be clear. But this does feel like a lot with Love and Ayuk and some of the other stuff that's been thrown out there. Is there a lack of respect for the Eagles? Is it not just us creating this stuff in our own heads?
I mean, the post-game nonsense coming out of the NFC Championship game is just crazy to me. Like, first of all, as you mentioned, Ayuk is popping off, and more so, I've never seen a more homer media contingent than the 49ers media. It's crazy how they're making all these excuses for this team. And you mentioned, maybe don't block Hassan Reddick with your backup tight end. Yeah. And then after he knocks your quarterback out of the game and creates a sack fumble, maybe don't do it again on the very next series. And he gets another big sack on Josh Johnson. So their game planning was odd, I would say, to say the least. Their argument would have been that, they have to run their offense, and part of their play action offense is, to have an edge rusher blocked by a tight end. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that works against whoever Seattle's defensive end is, but it's not going to work against Hassan Reddick. So why even try to come up with a different plan? The Eagles Nick Sirianni is very good with, making sure they negate, the opposing offense's best pass rusher or whatever. But getting back to the loser fan base mentality of these other teams around the league, it is very odd that all these other teams can't respect what the Eagles did in that NFC Championship game. The 49ers offensive line simply could not block the Eagles defensive line. And it goes beyond the two Hassan Reddick sacks. They couldn't block Javon Hargrave. They had trouble with Josh Sweat. They had trouble with Brandon Graham. Put Trent Williams on roller skates at one point. And I think they only had 3 or 4 sacks in that game, but they were all over those quarterbacks for the entirety of the first half. And then obviously, as we saw in the second half, as soon as Josh Johnson went down, they couldn't pass the ball anymore. That was as bad an ass kicking. That's the kind of game that 30, 40 years ago, they'd call that people would be fired up about the way the Eagles beat that team, as opposed to now making excuses for it.
Jimmy, Are you from Philly originally?
I am, yeah. Well,
Okay.
Marlton, New Jersey, South Jersey, same thing.
So why? And I've asked Rob this all the time. Why should we be surprised all the negativisms that come out towards this team or the city for that matter? Ever since I've been here since '97,
yeah.
And I've asked people religiously across the board. Nobody can give me a definitive answer. I've never seen anything like this in terms of the total disrespect for the teams in general, the fan base in general, the accomplishments in general. And let's face it. Okay, so they don't happen with the frequency of a New England one in their heyday, or the Boston Bruins or things like that. But nobody wants to give this city respect when respect has been earned. I don't understand why Philadelphia, out of all the major cities, you have hardcore bases in Boston, New York, Chicago.
Yeah.
When they have their success, people applaud them. And I'm not talking about just their fans and their media. I'm talking about nationally across the board, not Philadelphia, because the national media has been chastising this team all season. The teams they play have been chastising this team, and it continues even now. I've never seen anything like this, Jimmy.
It's hilarious to me that the team can be thought of as overrated while also so good that the head coach is just along for the ride.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. However, people want to put the team down or the city down, they'll find a way. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. The Eagles are in the Super Bowl. Who cares?
Well said.
All right. Well, just stemming off the total lack of respect, they give us. And, you look how Shanahan was just out coached, for him not to throw a flag, for that big play, that just goes to show, how inept he was as a coach, being the head coach. He also blew a Super Bowl lead when he was in with the Falcons. So I'll take him out of the equation. Everybody thought he was going to get out coached. Nick Sirianni's going to get out coached about this. Well, now, going to this Super Bowl, Andy Reid's coming off a bye. We know he's a great coach. We also know about his in-game, time requirements, his antics there. But I don't think that – I know Nick Sirianni at this point, this is his second year as a head coach. But I don't think that he's really going to be outmatched like everybody's thinking he is. Everybody just think he's just going to be, coach underneath the bench. But I don't see that from Nick Sirianni. His teams are well prepared. They're ready to go. Why is this so much disdain for our head coach and his ability to coach, man?
I mean, remember last time around, the one of the storylines leading up to the last Super Bowl was that Bill Belichick was a major advantage for the Patriots over Doug Peterson. And guess what? It wasn't. Like Doug Peterson coached his ass off that entire season.
Exactly.
And then obviously in the Super Bowl itself. Same thing here. Nick Sirianni coached his ass off all year long. The Eagles were stellar in situational football this year, just being smart at the right times. And that's not by mistake. Like it's by design. They coach situational football, I mean, to an intense degree throughout the entirety of the season. Nick understands the analytics behind the game. He's gone for it on fourth down 32 times, I think it was. And they got 22 of them. A lot of those are QB sneaks, of course. And one of the big plays in the San Francisco game, I think one of the sort of, under the radar forgotten ones, is when he went for it in his own end at like roughly their own 30 on a 4th and 1 or whatever. And they get the QB sneak and then they go down and score a touchdown on that drive. And that was a huge, huge drive in that game, obviously. To my surprise, actually, Andy Reid has only gone for it on 4th down 12 times this year. Only one team has gone for it fewer times than them. I don't know. I haven't taken a deeper look at the situations that they've been in and maybe where he should have been aggressive and wasn't. But that took me by surprise. I think Andy Reid is sort of a progressive coach in that he has adapted to sort of the modern football of today. There's no question about it that he is a walk-in Hall of Famer whenever his career is over as a head coach, and probably one of the top 5 coaches in NFL history. And like the way that he game plans and his innovations on offense and the way that he has his players ready offensively, second to none. In-game strategy, a little shaky, as Barrett mentioned, and that's something that. So we saw Doug Peterson be great at that in his 5 years in Philadelphia, and Nick Sirianni pretty much picked up where Doug left off and has been stellar in that area as well. So I don't know that there's necessarily a huge coaching advantage in the Chiefs' favor here. I think Nick Sirianni, rightfully so, was thought of as for most of the year a head coach, a coach of the year candidate, and probably should have been one of the 3 finalists, but isn't. But yeah, he's certainly been proven his worth in 2022 and even last year as well.
Jim, I know the craziness starts tonight with media night and everything that's happening, but set the scene for us early. I'm assuming you got in yesterday or Saturday. Has it been more Eagles fans? I know it's drastically different from the tundra in Minnesota, just from a weather perspective, but give me a little scene setting here in the Phoenix area.
Yeah, my flight was at like roughly 6 a.m. yesterday. I got in really early here. And I went to the airport, saw like the Eagles plane land, whatever. But as far as like just the area around here, it's weird. There's like fans wearing jerseys from all different teams around the entire NFL, like for the NFL fan experience stuff that they have going on here. I don't think that people that are going to the game, whether they're Eagles fans or Chiefs fans, are showing up yet. They'll probably get here probably closer to like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but they're not here yet. So it's been kind of quiet here. From my experience so far. Of course, I'm an old man, and because I had that 6 a.m. flight and I was up at like 2:30 Eastern on Sunday, I was in bed by like 7 last night, so I wasn't out on the town necessarily. So like, I'm very much in old man mode right now. I got up early, got some writing done, and I'm talking to you guys here now. So I haven't even out today. I checked into my new hotel, which is like right next door, but I haven't done anything today. So I'm probably the wrong. Elliot's probably more the guy that to ask on that.
Hey, Jimmy, I've covered 11 Super Bowls, and I've tried to describe to our viewers and listeners the bizarreness of media night.
Yes.
Give your perspective of some of the strangeness that you see on a media night at a Super Bowl. I think somebody should write a book on some of the antics and the costumes and lack thereof costumes that you see on that particular event.
I've only been to 2 of them. I went to whatever the New York Super Bowl was, New Jersey, whatever you want to call it, and then obviously the Eagles the last time. But yeah, it's wacky, man. Like, it's not so. Every sports media outlet, of course, is there, but every media outlet, period, is there. Most TV, like most cable TV channels, have something going on there, whether it be like Comedy Central, HBO, TV, whatever TV station you primarily watch, whatever the one that you go to on your remote first, they're there. And like you said, there's people dressed up and all kinds of crazy. I don't even know how these people get in and what their purpose serves there. I don't know, but there's a lot of weirdness going on there. And for like the 4 or 5 hours that you're kind of in this jungle of craziness for this media night, and the players and the coaches are almost kind of like an afterthought at this thing. Like, as like a reporter, we're interested in interviewing AJ Brown and Nick Sirianni and Landon Dickerson and such, but those guys are like, they take a back seat sort of to all the craziness that's going on around them.
Well, is that crazy, man? Is there more storylines in 2017 than there is in 2023, like now? I mean, 2022 season. But I mean, look at the storylines. You got brother against brother. Andy Reid, his old team Eagles. Is it easier writing for this Super Bowl? Or was it easier writing for 2017?
Yeah, one of the themes of the last one that I recall being read widely was anything about the Patriots being cheaters, because so like that sold to the fan base here very well. This year it's the Chiefs as a team aren't very hateable, because I think a lot of people still like Andy Reid and, hoped for him to have success in his post-Eagles career. And, you have the brother aspect where, Jason Kelsey attends a lot of Chiefs games. Travis Kelsey's in Philadelphia for some games when he's got a bye week or whatever. I think some of the Chiefs players are likable. Like, there's nothing really objectionable about Patrick Mahomes. There's nothing objectionable about their other star players. And it's kind of hard to sort of muster up hate for this team, whereas the Patriots were the evil empire. And you can come up with any number of reasons to hate that team. So, yeah, I think in that respect, we'll see sort of as the week goes on, if somebody says something stupid along the way, whether that's a Chiefs player or an Eagles player, and it kind of takes off from there, to be determined. But even Travis Kelsey said, for the love of God, do not do anything to the Rocky statue, Chiefs fans. Leave that thing alone. It's bad luck for whoever plays the Eagles if you mess with that thing. So just leave it alone. But as far as storylines come up, I would just say this. If you're here in Arizona and you can't come up with story ideas, get out of the business now, because you shouldn't be here.
Well said, Jim. What's an area, either side of the ball, or special teams, whatever, you feel like the Eagles can really exploit here?
Yeah, I mean, I just go right back to Hassan Reddick. So the Chiefs have a really good offensive line. In fact, left tackle, left guard, center. And we're talking about Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, and
Creed Humphrey.
Creed Humphrey. They're all Pro Bowlers. And then on the right side of the line, you have Trey Smith, who's a good young right guard. That right tackle spot is trouble area for the Chiefs and Andrew Wiley. And they're gonna have to give him help, because if he's one-on-one against Hassan Reddick, that's not going to go well. He gave up, I think, Pro Football Focus had him down for like 9 sacks or something like that. So, he's a guy that is a trouble area for them. And then I guess on the other side of the ball, I think just if we're talking about like an Eagles advantage perspective here, I think their corners are, good. And certainly L'Jarius Sneed, for my money, I think is like one of the more underrated players in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
That dude has over 100 tackles. Talk about like good tackling corners. That's him. And he's got 3 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles. Chiefs often had him trailing the opposing offense's best receiver. So we'll see if he trails A.J. Brown on Super Bowl Sunday.
If he plays, though, he's still hurt, though.
He's still hurt. So if he can't go, or if he's limited, then they're in big trouble. Because their other 2 corners, Snead, first of all, is a third-year guy. Their other 2 corners are rookies.
Yep.
So you got Trent McDuffie, who was like a first-round pick in the 20s, I believe. He plays he starts, and then he moves into the slot when they're in nickel. And the 7th-round pick rookie, I'm embarrassed.
Watson.
Right now. Yes, Watson. Jalen Watson. He comes in, and I think the opposing passer rating that he gave up this year was something like 109 or something like that. So that's an area they can exploit. And I think that if the Chiefs go heavy on the blitz, like Steve Spagnuolo is prone to do sometimes, if the Eagles can pick those up, there are matchups to be won on the back end.
Well, in saying that, then looking at, matchups to take advantage of. So you're saying our defensive line. Yes. As long as they keep if they can keep Mahomes inside the pocket, I see us having a great day on that side of the ball. Because I mean, we love individual matchups, and Kelsey is a matchup nightmare. How do you think they avoid him going off and really taking control of the game?
Yeah, it's a good question. And they're coming off a game where they also faced another really good tight end in George Kittle. And Kittle was, Kittle had one really good route on James Bradbury, no less, where he was able to get wide open and make a play. And then obviously the receivers were worthless in the second half because they didn't have a quarterback who could throw the ball. So, we'll see how they game plan for Kelsey. I think they can allocate more resources to him where they may not have been able to in the past when Tyreek Hill was still on this team, because they have a lot of receivers. They have 6 guys who are playable. The Eagles have 4 guys who are playable, but they have 6 who they can confidently, put in. I mean, I guess they now have 5 if McCole Hardman isn't going to play. But they don't have any star receivers. Like their most productive guy was Juju Smith-Schuster, who had like 900-something receiving yards this year, 3 touchdowns. So they don't have like that, alpha dog, number 1 type of wide receiver. That guy is Travis Kelce. So they can allocate more resources to him. And I think the Eagles they're strong in the middle of the field right now. They struggled for a little bit toward the back end of the season with tight ends. They were getting wide open in the middle of the field, but that was when CJ was hurt and Maddox was also hurt. So I think they were asking a little too much of Kaiser White in coverage in the middle of the field. They don't have to do that as much now because, Maddox and CJ. Maddox, by the way, is back in a boot, so we'll see if he's available on game day. But even if they just have Gardner Johnson, playing in the slot, and then in that case, Reed Blankenship would be at safety, I think that alleviates some of the fears that they can get just torn apart in the middle of the field by a guy like Travis Kelce. But I think that obviously he's going to be the focus of their game plan, their passing game. No doubt. I mean, he's for my money, that's the best tight end in the history of the NFL. Like, I think he's better than Rob Gronkowski. I think he's better as a more complete tight end than
Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah, so I think I mean he's going to be clearly the guy that the Eagles attempt to shut down. They'll put a lot of resources towards stopping him, but this is of the 5 Chiefs teams, they've been to 5 consecutive at least AFC championship games. 2 times they made it to the Super Bowl. Now 3 times they made it to the Super Bowl. This is the least scary Chiefs offense of those 5 teams, in my opinion, because they don't have Tyreek Hill.
Yep. Yeah, well said. Let me ask about the offense real quick and Jalen Hurts. Do you have a feel for what he's going to look like in this game, Jim? We know he's battling the shoulder thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought he played well in the Giants game. They just didn't have to throw the ball a ton. He was a little bit off last week against San Francisco for sure. But do you have any kind of feel for him going into this one?
Yeah, I mean, they could have broken the game wide open early when he had A.J. Brown running wide open down the field and he overthrew him. There's another play later in the game where A.J. Brown was running on the sideline and he threw a foul ball. Like he threw it out of bounds, didn't give A.J. Brown a chance to make a play. So there's maybe some accuracy issues in the intermediate to deeper part of the field that weren't there for the first 3 months of the season when he was playing at an MVP level. And maybe that has something to do with, his recovery from this shoulder sprain. And I think as a runner, initially, I mean, he wasn't running. I mean, they didn't call any design runs with the quarterback. They did, of course, in the playoffs against the Giants and the 49ers, but it hasn't run with the same, I guess, reckless abandon that, he did earlier in the season. So we'll see if he's back. Like the 2 weeks, I think, that he has to prepare for this game are going to be very helpful for him to get that shoulder a little more healthy for this game. And then obviously the Chiefs have their own concerns with Patrick Mahomes' ankle heading into this game. So both starting quarterbacks in this game sort of have nagging injury issues that they have to overcome. So to answer your question, I don't know what he's going to look like in this game in terms of how far, along more progressed he is with that shoulder. But I think we did see substantial improvement from the week 18 game that they had to have to clinch the 1 seed against the Giants. I thought he looked a lot better 2 weeks later against the Giants in the playoff game. And then I thought he looked better again in the 49ers game in the NFC Championship game against, obviously the number one defense in the NFL. Right. So, we'll see the numbers weren't there, but I thought he played reasonably well enough, those two overthrows aside. But yeah, I think there's good enough reason to believe that he'll come further along in the Super Bowl.
Jimmy, go back to Avonte Maddox for a moment because it was revealed last Friday that he was in that walking boot. At that time, did Sirianni give you guys any indication why he was in the boot again? Did he re-aggravate it or what?
They didn't really get. They're normally not helpful with injuries to begin with. Right. Certainly, they're not going to be any more helpful leading up to the Super Bowl. I would guess. So I've been in a boot before, and I don't want to play doctor here, but what the boot does is it just doesn't allow you to move certain muscle groups, and I guess the feeling is the idea for him is to just give those muscles as much of a rest as possible, and the boot helps you do that. Jalen Hurts has been in a boot before, like in between games last year when he had some ankle issues at the end of the year last year. So not terribly concerning that he's in the boot, but you'd probably prefer to see him not in the boot. Like you'd probably prefer to just because he only played 19 snaps in that 49ers NFC Championship game. Right. Some of that had to do, of course, with, again, they didn't have a quarterback who could throw the ball in the second half, so why put him out there? But yeah, I mean, he did play a limited number of snaps, so I guess we'll see if he's. But the Eagles are not going to be helpful with his help. Last week or certainly this week coming up.
He'll play. We're not worried about that. He'll play.
I think so too.
Yeah. So I mean, that's not. I mean, they're gonna pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
But,
all hands on deck.
Exactly. I mean, when I look at this game, man, and I break down the two quarterbacks, and I mean, for people to say that Jalen Hurts should not be put in the same conversation as the MVP candidate is crazy. It's ludicrous. Yes, we all know that Patrick Mahomes is all world and he deserves, the MVP. From my perspective, he still is the number one quarterback in the league. But you can't downplay, any less the effectiveness of Jalen Hurts and being a franchise quarterback. And there are people out there right now that think that he's not a franchise quarterback. What do you say to those nuts?
Yeah, that's crazy to think that he's not a franchise quarterback at this point. They're very different quarterbacks. Like Patrick Mahomes can make plays with his legs, certainly, and he's pinpoint from the pocket. The thing about him is you have to, the NFL people say you have to, quote unquote, cover every blade of grass with him. Because if he like any quarterback that's coming up, through Pop Warner, high school, college, they're taught number one thing, like don't throw across the field. And with the one exception to that rule is Patrick Mahomes, where he'll roll right and you think you have the play stopped, and then he throws all the way across the field to the left side of the field, and then they make a 40-yard play. He just does that all the time. Maybe not as much with Tyreek Hill, but he's still capable of making those plays pretty consistently. So he's a guy that he's very difficult to defend in that aspect, obviously. And then Jalen Hurts, just the dual threat that he brings to the table, where if you're stacking the box with 8 guys up front, he now has the ability to beat you down the field, whereas maybe that was a concern in 2021. A lot of those concerns were either blown out of the water or at least alleviated in 2022, where the addition of AJ Brown is huge too. Like, let's be honest about that. Like, without him last year, the 2 upgrades, just a little side note here, the 2 upgrades they made from Jalen Reagor to AJ Brown and Jannard Avery to Hassan Reddick.
Oh my God.
Just insane how much better your football team could be with just those 2 moves alone.
Right.
So AJ Brown's helped the development of Jalen Hurts, but even you could see in training camp, like, his accuracy was improved, his decision-making was improved. You could see him going from one read to the next, whereas previously there was, it was maybe one read, 2 reads and run. I think one thing that I remember back in training camp, like, one of the concerns was he was so heavily reliant on throwing to the right side of the field. He wasn't testing the middle. He wasn't testing the left side of the field. That's gone away. Like, remember remember when that was a thing? It's not a thing anymore. He throws to all parts of the field. So he crushed that.
He crushed that against Minnesota.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was sort of his coming out party as a passer earlier in this year. So, yeah, I think he's become a more complete quarterback, and it's, as a defense, it's pick your poison. If you're gonna allocate heavy resources towards stopping the pass, and they can kill you in the run game. And then if you put 8, 9 guys in the box, then he can beat you down the field as well. So very different types of players. Whereas the Chiefs, I think they're heavily reliant on Patrick Mahomes, whereas the Eagles are a little bit more balanced in that they can beat you with the pass, and they can certainly bludgeon you with the run.
All right, Jim, we'll let you go, but I know you got to run. But prediction here, I know it's Monday. Have you formulated your how you think this bad boy's
Yeah,
gonna end
up? I'm going to pick the Eagles. Like, I'm heavily leaning that way, but ultimately, I'm going to pick them. I think it's just 60,000-foot view. It reminds me a lot of the Patriots game last year. Star quarterback, but the rest of the roster is way better than the Patriots. And I think that's similar in this case, where the Eagles roster, quarterbacks aside, is way better than their roster. And I actually think the quarterbacks this time around, Patrick Mahomes to Jalen Hurts, really not that big of a drop off. So yeah, give me the Eagles in this game.
All right, Jimmy, we appreciate it, man, as always, and keep up the good work, man. We love reading you, Philly Voice, and checking you out on Twitter as well, at Jimmy Kempski. Jim, thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the weather.
All right. That is Eagles writer for the Philly Voice, Jimmy Kempski, hopping on with us. Interesting thoughts there, guys. I like the Patriots comp, where he essentially, we all looked at it and we said, oh my God, it's Belichick and it's Brady. How are little old Doug Peterson and Nick Foles going to hold up here? And lo and behold, we saw how that played out,